Hello, must readers. I am Erin Popelka. I curate must read fiction, a place for people who love to read fiction, who just think that life is better with a novel in hand. And I am so excited because I'm here today with Devin Murphy, whose first novel, The Boat Runner, is due out in early September. And I'm so excited because we are going to talk about his book, and we're going to talk about fiction, and we're going to talk about raising his children with fiction and reading. And I'm just so excited to have Devin here. So a little bit of background. He has his bachelor's and master's from St. Bonaventure University. He has his master's of fine arts in creative writing from Colorado State, and he has his PhD in creative writing from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. The Boat Runner has gone out with some advanced readers. It's totally doing fantastic on Goodreads right now, ranking 4.6 stars out of 5. And I love this quote from one of the advanced readers who said, "This is the best kind of literary fiction, one that doesn't fall short on storytelling, but has depth, beauty, and heart-wrenching revelations," which is just such a fantastic review. So Devin, welcome to Must Read Fiction.
Thank you very much, Erin. It's nice to be here, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, it's truly
and finding
my
my mother's quote there online.
You know, we do what we can. We do our research around here.
Yeah.
So I have not been one of the lucky advanced readers for The Boat Runner. So tell me about the book.
Sure. So it's set in the Netherlands at the dawn of World War II, which is where my mother's actually from. My mother was born in occupied Holland, and so I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and that side of her family stayed overseas, and was really a mystery to me. So in the back of my head, I kind of had this Dutch family I knew about, and I'd hear them over the phone, and some cousins would visit, but it was a real mystery. And so the Netherlands always had kind of this part of my imagination. And years later, when I was in graduate school, I was really trying to learn how to write fiction, and spending a lot of time, putting just, the sweat in to figure out what I was doing and making all the mistakes. And I was looking for a novel to think about. And I saw a picture of little boys saluting the fjord in the youth camps. And the picture showed these boys' joyful faces.
Yeah.
And they were so brainwashed and so potently buying into the system that I was horrified by the picture. Of course, I knew about those camps, and I really kind of understood the large concept and how evil and miraculously intelligent and manipulative it was to put those camps together. But to see those faces of joy, it kind of really unsettled me. And so I started thinking about, hey, what is the system of thought that changes people's actions and their lives? And so I had all this background of the Netherlands in my mind, and I took that little seed and put them together, and then I started writing this book about a Dutch family, an industrious, pretty wealthy family, and whose wealth isolated them a little bit, but whose father ran a light bulb factory, and he was trying to get the Volkswagen account in Germany.
Okay.
And to get the Volkswagen account and to kind of curry favor with the Germans, he offered up his boys to go to the local summer camps in 1939 Germany.
Wow.
And so these three Dutch boys go to a summer camp, these two Dutch brothers. And that system of thought that, of course, boys can't be aware of, we see how it kind of forces upon them, and the book starts like that. So it goes on through to follow this boy's life for 4 years through the losses he sustains during the war, and it becomes this sort of epic journey through World War II Europe that really shocked me. It took me a long time to learn about and study and write, but and then I took my mother's history and my own research and my own background, and I spent some time at sea, so I know shipping and boats, and that became a big part of it. So it just became this long conglomeration of my life that tied together into the making of this book, this first novel of mine. That I set out, I wanted to write a novel, and I finished this one. I didn't think that was going to be the novel I was going to do.
Right, indeed. This is definitely sort of like a huge adventure. Absolutely. Wow, what a journey. And certainly kind of what a story for your characters, and certainly what a journey for you in the writing of the novel. Can you talk to me a little bit more about your research process? Because I imagine that was incredibly involved, both, kind of with geography and with the history, and certainly with details for those characters.
Very much so. At the time, I was dating my now wife, and we had both just read The Book Thief. And it was a wonderful, beautiful book. And And I was in graduate school to study creative writing and writing kind of gritty contemporary short stories. And she like, I don't know if she meant this to be a little barb or a poke at me, but she goes, you could do something like this if you just did some research. And I thought, okay, well, maybe.
You're like,
And so
well, I love you too. Thanks a lot.
yeah, I'm like, well, what does that mean to do research? And so I actually kind of started thinking about that. And I had originally thought like research was the fabric of clothing somebody wore and the right color patterns and dates. And as a fiction writer, that's not all that you're after. You're kind of after a moment that you hold up and you say, can this be an opportunity to bring my character to life? Mm-hmm. And so I would find a moment of these boys playing games at a summer camp and how fun it is, but how the reader just kind of knows there's something amiss here. And then I would find a moment about the seafaring capacity of the German Navy and think, well, that's an interesting fact. But then I could think about what happens if my character is in this situation, and how does that become alive, and how does that take all the elements of fiction, of plot and conflict and suspense. And once I started kind of realizing that research was offering up the path forward in my story, it just changed for me. Life just changed entirely. I wasn't really it didn't even occur to me what a historical novel was. I just would read a novel and I would just, that's a novel, right? And
sure.
So now I really understood like what that was all about. You find this different background and you populate it with your own imagination and characters. And so research became time in the library, going to museums, going to, for World War II, I was in Nebraska and Illinois and Chicago and New York and Maine. And all these rural places have these local museums. Like aficionados would just go around to garage sales and collect all this stuff. And so I could hold the paperwork that people had to use to pass borders. I could try the uniforms on. I could read these old books and feel the ammunition. And so it became this really visceral experience. And so I would find a pass book, how you would kind of present your ID and realize this isn't as complicated as the fake IDs I made to get in bars when I was 19, you know? And I thought, wait a minute, what about, my roommate would fake ID so we could sneak into the bar. That's pretty easy to do on these paperworks. And then this whole idea of identity and shape-shifting identity became a huge part of the book. So little details would become big kind of thematic backbones of the story. And I had no idea those were out there waiting for me. So I became a massive fan of research. And my wife, we read a lot of novels, but she'd every once in a while look over and be like, what is this thing, this dusty old, book this big that you're reading that's like navigation charts of the British military.
Right.
So
right.
It took me down a lot of fun avenues, but it also it took a long time.
Yes.
So it's fun, and I really enjoy it, and it taught me how to write books and figure out narrative structures and styles for future books, which was kind of a blessing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Definitely. Yeah. That first process, there's so, what is the phrase? Like always make new mistakes. It's good to get a lot of mistakes out of the way early.
I mean, I invented some.
Fair enough. And what an interesting process to think about the research too, because it is that like very layered process where you're both like trying to understand the big picture, because that's like the context and the assumptions and almost just sort of like the unseen bones of the world of the characters that are different than like the cultural assumptions that we have now in our country, and then seeing that huge big picture and then working down even to like what you were saying, like the feel of the fabric and what like paperwork would look like. And paperwork and that having your papers was such an important piece of, kind of that time. So what a fascinating journey.
Yeah, it was neat. I think of fiction writing as like you're playing the accordion, because the thing has to expand and contract a lot, and it's a double-edged sword, because that's a cliche, but it's got this element where I could spend all this time researching the past books and the color of the paper and everything and the fringe of it, and I could cut that page. It might not make it. And so I spent all this time writing this book, but I had to cut the first 102 pages of it.
Yeah. I feel for you because that's true with these epic books, because you have to really build this world that's this big, but you only get to tell a story that's this big, and so there's only so much that fits into the narrative of the story and the lives of the characters, but you have to know it all for it to all ring true, right?
Exactly. And one of my first readers said, oh, I like this ending and this ending. and this ending you wrote, and this, because I kept like, I didn't want to leave this world, you know, and I kept writing and writing, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess I have to find my point to exit here. So
Right.
process. Yeah, I'm happy to dwell in it.
Yes, and happy now that you found an ending that works well enough, because the book is, going to be in the world. So, there's an ending.
I know it's kind of, it's very strange to have this thing. I think probably your first one is more so that, what are you doing? Oh, I'm writing something. I'm going to go do work, but it's vague and no one really questions about it because are you ever going to pull this off or not? And so I was kind of alone with this thing for a long time.
Yeah.
And to have it go out in the world is exciting and scary. And, it's strange to have people actually talk to me about work that's kind of been private for so long.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting experience going forward. And so we're a few weeks away from it hitting the shelves. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So, congratulations, good luck, and hang in there, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and all of the above. Well, I mean, speaking of a pretty epic journey, I know from your bio that you have spent 3 years at sea. So I would love to hear more about like how that came about, and what were the circumstances? What led you to spend 3 years at sea?
So it's kind of a long story, and I'll try to make it short, which is I had older sisters that did some traveling, and I always thought, oh, I want to do that. And so I worked starting from when I was, 15, and instead of like saving money to buy a car, I always knew like that traveling was a neat option. And so I wanted to travel, and then not having much money, I realized also you could go get jobs in interesting places. And so all through, at the end of high school, well, actually, let me back up. The first place I'd hire a 16-year-old boy was the Alzheimer's ward of a nursing home in my lifetime.
Okay.
And so I worked all through high school in the Alzheimer's ward of a nursing home, serving dinner, cleaning dishes, and it was really bleak.
Yeah.
And part of me maybe just internalized, if this is how I'm going to end up, I'm going to live a pretty big, epic life.
Sure.
And you're young and you're naive and idealistic, so I bought into that maybe a bit at the time. I had to tell many people about that. I don't think I could have formulated the idea. And then I thought, well, my sister did this experiential thing, this travel thing, and she went up to Maine and got a job at a YMCA camp. So when I was 17, I called up and I said, hey, I'm Sabrina's little brother. And they said, come on up.
Nice.
And so I went up there for the summer, and I led hiking, biking, canoeing, rock climbing, and sailing trips. I didn't know how to do any of that. And so
on the job training, right? We'll figure it out.
And I loved it. And then I went the next summer when I was 18 before college, and I really loved it, the outdoors. And I realized I would like to spend more time in the outdoors, but without a bunch of preteens behind me. And so all through college, I decided instead of just taking some crappy job like at the nursing home, this was kind of, the internet was coming online here. And I found all these tourist resorts like Rocky Mountain National Park, and these people do this work. So I went out there. Glacier National Park in Montana did this. And so what I was doing is I was trying to find steeper and steeper mountains to climb. And then I thought, well, I have to go to Alaska.
Yeah. For sure.
My method was like a salmon breeding. I would send out a bunch of applications and hopefully one works, right?
Sure.
And so the first person to call me back from Alaska was a boat company.
No kidding.
They said, we run 6-night cruises on the Inside Passage, and you could come up and be like a steward. What's a steward? I'll be there tomorrow.
Right.
And so a steward, I was like going to clean bathrooms and serve dinner and like clean the ship. And it was a small 50-passenger ship. And I showed up, and I was there on the dock, and the boat came up, and the captain looked down and said, oh, you're a 6-foot-tall guy. You're my new deckhand.
Okay.
I've never been on a boat in my life. What do you want me to do here? And so I spent the summer being a deckhand on this boat, and I realized these boats are everywhere, and they go over the planet.
Yeah.
And just with persistence, they don't hire many Americans because they're expensive workers, but they do hire a few to be kind of like, different, to have different representations on the boat in some cases. So I found these small expedition ships that went all over the world, and I hounded them until they hired me. And so I eventually got on and just worked my way up and up and up. And I did that until it was kind of a weird business. Like one day I went to bed working for Clipper Cruise Lines and on a boat in the middle of nowhere. And I woke up working for Cruise West. This company sold me.
All right.
and so and then one business went out of business. One company went out of business, and the next one out of business. And the writing started coming on the walls. This was just before 2008.
Sure.
And I realized, okay, I was writing the whole time, but I was not getting much better and I needed help. And so then I applied to these graduate programs and I said, I'm going to go to graduate school. And so I left the boats, I went to graduate school in Colorado. And a couple months later, they say, hey, Devin, what are you doing this summer?
Yeah.
You want to go to Japan and Kamchatka Peninsula and the Bering Sea in Alaska, and then you can go back to school. I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Okay, yeah.
So for a long time, I worked these travel jobs, and eventually when it led me to sea, I got to go all over the planet doing that. And I had to do some really awful work, around the
for
clock.
sure. Yeah.
It wasn't like glamorous. I was doing everything I was asked, but I got basically a free ticket to all 7 continents.
Amazing.
And it very much filtered into the writing of this book and my future writing as well. So it was really worth it.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite story you tell, like something that was particularly like delightful or surprising from your time at sea?
Okay, let's see. A good story from that time. I have lots of them, and all of them were pretty unique. And something really neat happened. Is it was a bit lonely life, and I'd send emails to my friends when I could, because the ship it didn't always, it wasn't connected to the internet, and maybe once every couple of days it would send a blast by satellite out, and so your emails would go out. And so I'd like send little stories to my friends, and a few of them, 3 of them, saved every email I sent them.
Wow! Oh,
and
what a record!
And well, it turns out to be it's one of them printed them and gave them back to me, and so I have all those emails, which actually really is a nice little backbone of a future project, it turns out. But so reading through those, there was lots of adventures, and one was lots of kind of dangerous stuff, like being woken up in the middle of the night in the South Pacific because the engine room was on fire.
Oh dear! Oh, that would be surprising.
Yeah. I found a dead passenger. Like kind of, yeah. Like these are kind of things that really stuck with me.
I mean, but what a way to go, right? Like having the trip of your lifetime. Like,
that's how I want to do it.
I know. I mean, I could like that. I would do that.
And a lot of really brilliant wildlife encounters with sea life. So, for example, when I was that first job I was on, I was, they call me a greenhorn. You're green. You're new to this whole thing, and you don't know what you're doing. And that was absolutely me. The first boat I was on, and I think the captain was messing with me a bit because we had a pot of orca whales swimming around us. And they made me go down and open this hatch right next to the bow that like had no rail. And so you step into the hatch and it goes up to kind of your waist. And I got into the hatch, and about 2 feet from me is a drop off to the ocean, and a blow, orca kind of breached or came up right there and blew. And they said I jumped about 7 feet in the air. And the proximity to that thing was pretty terrifying, but it was neat because these boats were so small. The idea they could go into rivers or deep ocean, coastal and ice, and so everything was available. So these huge monstrous cruise ships can only go into ports that have been dredged, but these other ones we would just drop little boats and go tooting around shores. And so I really had a lot of opportunity to be close to the natural world, which was very exciting, from bears to whales to everything in between. So that was a real highlight. Yeah,
absolutely.
It was a real good thing to do while young and adventurous.
Right, but still 6 feet tall, in
low.
Yeah.
Boy, they said I jumped 6 feet. They said I was equidistant off the ground.
Right. Indeed. And that's actually one of those nice things too with those smaller boats, is that like, yes, you get to go in those rivers, but also you sleep in your own bed every night. So it's like travel, but with the continuity of like the ship and the passengers on the ship. And I can only imagine like you met some pretty interesting characters at your time there as well.
Yeah, and there's people that pay for the cabins, and then what you don't know is there's this ecosystem of the work staff below decks.
Right.
Not nice accommodations in a lot of these things.
Right.
And nights, where you're literally you would have to hold your mattress because you're hitting waves so hard.
Yeah.
All night long, you're being thrown out of your bed, and because one of the ships I was in the bow, so when you go right up a huge wave, you slam down. Your bed drops out from under you all night long,
and then waking up the next day to do 12 hours of physical labor, like as long as there's daylight.
It was great. So I'm not in a hurry to do that again, but
right. But a good experience to have under your belt, and now you've knocked all 7 continents off the list. So congratulations.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. I didn't know that was possible, but I didn't know that was even a goal to think about, or it wasn't really a goal. It just is kind of a byproduct of that life. But once you once you go somewhere, I know I read up on you too. And once you go somewhere, you want to go to the next place. And once you go to enough somewheres, you end up like, what's the most exotic place? Missing Antarctica. So
we have visiting Antarctica in common, indeed. And so where in Antarctica did you go to cross that one off your list?
Well, so I was working on the ships, and what happens, these boats will follow the sun. And so in the northern summers, they go up to the Arctic. As far as they have solid ice hauls, and it's basically a class below an icebreaker. And in the northern winters, they go south, so through South America and whatnot, and Australia and New Zealand. And then we left from Ushuaia down to Antarctica, and there's different itineraries. You could go out to the Falkland Islands, or go down to across they call it the Drake Lake, which is basically the sea passage at the tip of southern South America, which was so nasty.
It's such bad seas. I've heard only horrible things about that stretch of water. Yeah.
People said, let's build a Panama Canal instead, which was, the hardest engineering project ever and cost a lot of time, but it's better than the Drake Lake, because it's either calm or you're all night holding on to your bed. And so we went through that, and I got to do that, which was a lot of fun. And you kind of can't, in that life, you can't quite control your schedule. Like, okay, Dad, this ship for 4 months and a month off, and this ship for 4 months, and the ships are just moving. So, okay, I'll be here, I'll be there, and you just kind of go where the ship goes. So it was great. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what an experience. What an experience. And what an experience to tell your children about. So I know that you are a father, and I would just love to kind of close our interview and just talk, we are a group of people that just love reading. We have a lot of people who are grandparents and parents. And so talk to me about, kind of reading and writing with your children and how that has played out now that you're a father and a little bit more settled.
Yeah. Are you asking me, like, do I interact and read with them? And
yeah, absolutely. And like, how is it like watching them, kind of like, read some books over and over, the ones that they're their favorites, how they're engaging with them, how has that process been?
Well, that younger guy on the ships could not have fathomed my life right now.
I'm sure.
It just wasn't, they just are totally different things. And so once I have 3 kids under 5 right now, and one's a 4-month-old baby.
Oh my word.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so once I had that first son, it was like, oh, I guess I didn't quite know that physicality of change that happens into, and how important that could be. And so that was really, really special. And I had that part of me that was like a manic, I need to write, I want to write. And then it became like, okay, I'm this is part of my life. This other part. And so how can I share what I've become good at and what I know down the line? And I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
And kids love stories.
Kids love stories.
So it's kind of like a bonus for me.
Yeah.
I can really tell stories, and it's very strange because I can write dark stuff. I'm not a dark nature person at all, but when you sit down, for some reason, that just kind of your subconscious takes where it goes. Yeah, it's there. But with the kids, it can be all light and fun, and a little touch of menace is fun for my 5-year-old, and my 3-year-old daughter is starting to get really into that. And so it's a lot of fun. And what's really interesting being a parent is you're seeing, like you said, that repetition of what they're interested in and what they're good at. And my kids are both, not the baby, but the 2 older ones, are naturally good with language. And you're starting to realize, like, oh, this is why I'm the way I am. I was always like this, and people expose me to stories. And for me, if you give me facts and figures, it's like, no, okay. But if you give me a narrative, I'll remember the rest of my life.
Sure.
And so it's like, oh, people are giving me narratives from that small age. And it helped me kind of string along details and open my mind. So I try to give that to my kids. And my wife's a bigger reader than I am. So we do a lot of that, which is a ton of fun. And I'm not in a hurry to tell them about my own real travels, because they might try to mimic it at some point.
Right. It's way better to do it than to watch them do it. Yeah.
Maybe just keep that between us.
Right. We won't send them the link to this interview. It'll be good.
Yeah, like, we got to scrub this from the file.
Yeah, but oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's so exciting. Well, keep reading, keep telling stories to your children, and my goodness, keep writing. Must readers, you must go find The Boat Runner. You have to go check it out. I can't wait to get my hands on a copy. And I just want to kind of close because you did an interview with 17 Scribes, and I just loved you saying that the novel is also going to be translated into Dutch, and so your mother will get to read it in her native language, which is so beautiful. So exciting that like you got to give her that gift as well in her native tongue.
It is about the neatest thing. I mean, I didn't even know that was a possibility when I started this out, and it started with kind of the seed of who her father was, who died when she was 19, well before I was even around. So
wow.
It's really going to be a neat thing. That should come out in October. I got to see the Dutch cover, and the real thing is I can't speak Dutch.
Oh dear.
So it would be cool if I like wrote it in Dutch, but no, somebody else did the hard work. But I will get to give that gift. So I'm really excited for that to hit the world, and definitely people close to me who know I've been working really hard on it for a long time. So.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you for all of your hard work, and thank you for that gift both to your mother and to all of us. I'm so excited to read it and can't wait. I just can't wait. So The Boat Runner, Devin Murphy, must readers, please go check it out. And Devin, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks everybody who's going to maybe listen down the line. Take care.
Bye.